I said it. Good evening. And welcome back to the Turn the Tassel Show. My name is Stephen Ampersand. I am your host. And as always, we are here to help you and the people you love get to and through college, university, or the trade schools earlier on time with minimum to no debt. And yeah, I did say good evening because as you may remember from a previous broadcast, we're switching things up a bit. We're going to be doing an evening broadcast throughout the week. We typically would air 10 a.m., but we're going to try an evening broadcast because, understandably, folks are working and or in school, usually by 10 a.m., and we want to make sure that this information gets out to as many people as possible. And so, welcome to a new audience, and congratulations for finding us. We're glad you're here. And look forward to spending great time with you as we talk through the realities of higher education and funding higher education in the 2022s and beyond. So we talk often here about current issues in higher education. And one of the things that we here at Turn the Tassel Consulting Group often address is the exorbitant and ballooning cost of attending college, university, and even some trade schools today. And we've gone through a litany of reasons for why things are what they are. And it's important to go back and see and learn why. So I want to encourage you, go back through our library, look at a lot of the reasons and factors that have contributed to where we are as a society around college education and the cost associated with it. But before you get too far down that rabbit hole, just understand that because of how things are, it's good to know how things got to where they are, but you still have to deal with how things are right now, as you are preparing right now, perhaps to send someone you know and love or yourself to go to college, university, or a trade school. So you can go back and understand the history behind how we got here, but it's just important for you to know how, okay, we're here. So what then do you do now that we are here? How do you set yourself up or someone that you love up for success around higher education based on how the higher ed landscape is today? And that's where understanding these principles that we talk about here is very important. The title of today's episode is really, the wrap up to what was a huge scandal with the University of Southern California, USC. And please recall, they have had several scandals, one most recently being the ridiculous 6-figure master social work program that has just completely devastated most of the young women that were in their program. And we talk often about that because, I'm somebody that really believes wholeheartedly in setting our young women up for success. And with a college enrollment rate of 60% women across the board, it's women who are shouldering the burden of this $1.73 plus trillion student loan debt obligation. They have upwards of 60% of that debt. So it's even commensurate with the number of students in the population, right? And that significantly hampers their ability to really move on and advance in their lives. It stunts their growth because it's such a huge debt obligation, right? But they had that scandal where they showed in did case studies on these young women's stories, and it was tragic. It was just awful, just awful. The amount of debt that they were looped into, and you can't charge it off, and all those things. So that was tough. But prior to that was the admissions scandal. They call it the Varsity Blues scandal, and I won't rehash that. But just a quick synopsis: rich celebrities and other affluent 1% type people were working with coaches in, I'll say, obscure USC sports teams and finessing their rich children or rich and famous children's um, admissions into USC, a big prestigious school, by getting them on these teams, even though they'd never played water polo in their lives, as an example. They were getting them in to this college, and they got caught. And it was like, well, this has to be punished, because look at all the qualified students that should have been able to get in, whose spots these students took that hadn't earned it. So we're going to look at this because they've sentenced a coach that was involved in this. And with this sentencing, it pretty much wraps up the scandal, although there's a few more sentences to be handed out. So we're going to go ahead, without further ado, and cut to camera number 2. And let me jump on here. Let's see. I want to move over because I'm messing with the logo there. There we go. All right, so let's read this. Okay. It says It says ex-coach convicted in admission scandal. This case brings a close. Rewind. This case brings a close, except for sentencing and appeals to the Varsity Blues episode. Okay, and this was dated April 11th of 2022. Okay, so it says Jovan Vavic, former head coach of the University of Southern California's water polo teams, was convicted by a federal jury Friday in connection with soliciting and accepting bribes to promote the admission of students to USC as purported athletic recruits. The conviction was on all charges after a 5-week trial. The charges include conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, and honest services mail and wire fraud, which provides for a sentence of up to 20 years in prison, conspiracy to commit federal programs bribery, which provides for a sentence of up to 5 years in prison, and wire fraud and honest services wire fraud, which provides for a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. Sentencing will take place at a later date. Play with fire, you're going to get burned. Vavic's conviction brings to 54 the number of convictions in the Varsity Blue admission scandal. The only defendant without a conviction was pardoned by President Trump on his last day in office. With today's conviction, the government has now held 55 individuals accountable for what is arguably one of the largest scandals in academia history, said U.S. Attorney Rachel S. Rawlins. To say that the conduct in this case is reprehensible is an understatement. The rich, powerful, and famous, dripping with privilege and entitlement, use their clout and money to steal college admission spots from more hardworking, qualified, and deserving students. This case was a righteous one, and I could not be prouder of our prosecutors in securing this verdict. Most of those convicted were parents and coaches. All right, let me stop the show here for a second. Why is this even important? Like, why do we care? Like, should we applaud that? Yay, they held them accountable. Yes, all right. Score one for the little guy. No. These rich people wanted to get their kids into the USC because USC has a name recognition to it. That's the only reason. They can literally afford to send their kids anywhere. The issue isn't the money with these rich, affluent stars, etc., dripping, as the article says, with privilege. The money is a non-issue for them. The issue for them is that they've, in large part, raised spoiled, low-achieving children that are entitled, and let's be honest, most don't even want to go, but because of the egos of these parents, the parents and their egos, they want to be able to say that their son or daughter goes to USC, right? They did this, and now so many 55 plus have been punished. But that's not a victory for the little guy, because what was the argument? Look, they stole spots from other deserving students. Yeah, other deserving students who, sweeping generalization alert, can't afford to go there. Like, they can't afford it. How are you going to steal something from somebody that doesn't belong to them? Well, they academically qualify. Well, yeah, but that's just one of the qualifiers. You have to be able to academically qualify, and you also have to be able to pay for it. All right, well, what about the ones who did academically qualify and pay for it? All right, well, yeah, then they were stealing it from them, but are they the little guy? If they are academically prepared and can afford USC to go and be a social worker for $135,000 or something ridiculous like that, is what it was, to then turn around and have a bachelor's of social work that pays nothing. Nothing. What in the flat earth is going on here? I mean, let's get back to it. It says the case against Vavick. Beginning in 2013, Rick Singer, the mastermind of the scandal, made payments to a USC account that funded Vavick's teams and paid private school tuition. Private school tuition for his children. In return, Vavick would flag students as purported water polo players to be admitted as recruited athletes. Really? Vavick also agreed to recruit other coaches to join in the scheme. What a mess. Vavick was a highly successful coach and served as head coach of the men's and women's water polo teams at USC for more than 20 years. During this time, he led the teams to more than a dozen national championships. USC fired Vavick after his arrest in 2019. Of course. All right, you know what? Stop the show. I once resigned from a job. I was a upper level administrator at a school, and we uncovered some messy things in the Title IV financial aid area, heavily regulated, and very problematic things that were going on there. And I resigned from that position because when we uncovered the depths of the nightmare, they wanted me to look the other way. And I refused. Because just like I do this work for this reason, I worked in higher ed all my career for the same, which is to help students change their lives through education. And not just change them, but change them for the better. I came to help people, not to harm them. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement because it was not easy to do. I can tell you. You want to talk about hand wringing. When you are um, married and have children and all the weight and pressure of mortgage and car payments and food on the table and all these things that you have as a man that's married and is raising children, uh, there's nothing more scary than to be faced with that kind of ultimatum. Look the other way and keep your job, or be a person of integrity and watch us ruin you. That's an awful position for anybody to be in. So I do. I appreciate the encouragement for the recognition that walking away from something like that was courageous. It was. But it had to be done because what is the alternative? Coach Vavick. You see, Coach Vavick was, as we read up top here, Vavick was a highly successful coach and served as head coach of the men's and women's water polo teams at USC for more than 20 years. Those 20 years didn't mean anything, did they? Not in the end. In the end, all that success meant nothing because he was asked to look the other way and to, in fact, facilitate abusive admissions practices that landed him and so many others in jail. You see, people, you can't compromise your integrity. You've got to do the right thing, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because guess what? In almost every instance, doing the right thing is the hard thing. You have to have personal integrity. That yes, in my case, I walked away from a job and didn't have one to go to. But the alternative was Mr. USC Vavick fired by that same college that asked him to do the unthinkable things. They just fired him in 2019 and flushed him down the toilet. You see, you shouldn't give up your personal integrity because once you've done that, what do you have? Right? Meaning it's not just a matter of the punitive realities of lacking integrity. It's also that it speaks volumes about your character and who you are and the kind of person you are. It diminishes you. It robs you of dignity to lack integrity and to do these kinds of things. But the most important thing that it does is it puts you in a position to be completely and utterly screwed over. And when you do get screwed over, no one feels sorry for you getting screwed over. Because you did it and you lacked integrity. Who feels sorry for somebody that does something like this? Which is why you don't do it. There's so much more here. I won't read it all. So we'll kind of wrap things here with this. But I'll tell you, if there's any takeaway from this admission scandal that you need to take, is that number one, do not compromise your personal integrity. It's not worth it. You will not come out on the upside in the end. You can't. Because there's nothing honorable about being dishonorable. And like I've said so many times, sweeping generalization alert, colleges and universities, no matter what their moniker, private, for-profit, nonprofit, Ivy League, it doesn't matter. They're all businesses. And they all have access to the federal financial aid Title IV programs through the Department of Education. It's the same thing. Walden University has the same accreditation and receives the same Title IV funding as Harvard and Yale. So understand that these are businesses, and they're going to get what they can out of you as a student, but yes, also if you happen to work in the industry as an employee. And when they use you for what they want and you're no longer able to give them what they want, they will easily and without much heartburn eject you and move on. That's why you need a plan. You know, we talk about it so often here on the show, how you need a plan, because you don't get mad at the businesses for being businesses, right? Just like, you don't get mad at a shark being a shark. You just know how to navigate the waters that sharks are in so you don't become lunch, right? But you don't get mad at a shark. Shark's going to shark. Shark is going to shark. So know that. Get a plan together. Know what you need to get out of your college, university, or trade school experience so that they get what they want. They're going to. But you make sure you also get what you want so that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. 484-574-1866. turningtassel@gmail.com. Subject line for either. I need a plan. We will help you get one together so that you and the people you love can get to and through college, university, or trade schools earlier on time, minimum to no debt. Stephen Ampersand, Turn the Tassel Consulting.